The last straw. Jessica Morgan stared at the spreadsheet on her screen, but the numbers blurred into meaningless shapes. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her coffee mug, still processing what had just happened in the conference room. For years of working at Ashford Communications, and Richard Ashford had never been crueler than he was this morning. The presentation had taken her 3 weeks to prepare. She had researched market trends, analyzed competitor strategies, and created a comprehensive campaign for their biggest client, Riverside Technologies. Every detail had been perfect. Or so she thought. Richard had dismantled it in front of 12 colleagues, without even looking at half the slides. His voice had been cold, dismissive, as if her work was nothing more than an inconvenience in his busy schedule. The words still echoed in her mind like a painful recording she could not turn off. "This is mediocre at best, Morgan. Did you even consider the target demographic? Your analysis is superficial. Your creative concepts are uninspired, and frankly, I expected someone with your experience to deliver something worthy of our client's investment." Jessica had stood there, frozen while her colleagues avoided eye contact. Some looked sympathetic, others relieved that they were not the target of his criticism today. Nobody defended her work because nobody wanted to become his next target. The decision now. Sitting at her desk in the quiet afternoon office, Jessica opened a blank document and began typing the words she had thought about for months but never had the courage to write. "Dear Mr. Ashford, please accept this letter as formal notification of my resignation from my position as Senior Marketing Strategist at Ashford Communications. My final day of work will be 2 weeks from today." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to write everything she had been holding back for 4 years. She wanted to tell him how his constant criticism had eroded her confidence, how his impossible standards made everyone miserable, how his management style drove away talented people who could have contributed so much more in a supportive environment. But Jessica had always been professional, even when others were not. She kept the letter short and polite, printed it, and walked toward his corner office with her head held high. Richard was on a phone call when she approached. He saw her through the glass walls and motioned impatiently for her to wait. Jessica stood outside his office, watching him gesture animatedly while speaking to whoever was on the other end. Everything about him screamed power and control, from his perfectly tailored navy suit to the way he commanded his space. When he finally hung up, he did not invite her in. He simply stared at her expectantly, as if her presence was already taking too much of his valuable time. "Mr. Ashford, I need to give you this." Jessica stepped into his office and placed the resignation letter on his desk. He picked it up, scanned it quickly, and his expression hardened. "You are quitting." "Yes, I believe this is the right decision for my career growth." Richard leaned back in his leather chair, studying her with those sharp blue eyes that had intimidated so many employees over the years. "Your career growth? Let me tell you something about career growth, Morgan. It comes from accepting feedback and improving your performance, not running away when things get challenging." Jessica felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "I have accepted feedback for 4 years, Mr. Ashford. What you provide is not feedback. It is constant criticism without guidance, dismissal without discussion, and judgment without consideration." His eyebrows rose slightly, clearly surprised that she was pushing back. "If you cannot handle professional standards, perhaps you are right to leave." "Professional standards are important," Jessica agreed. "So is treating people with respect. I have learned a lot here, but I have also learned that there are better environments where talented people can actually thrive instead of just survive." She turned to leave before he could respond, her heart pounding but her shoulders straight. Behind her, she heard him say, "Good luck finding anyone who will tolerate mediocre work, Morgan." Jessica did not turn around. She walked back to her desk, feeling lighter than she had in years, despite the trembling in her hands. New Beginnings, her best friend Nicole, who worked in the accounting department, rushed over as soon as she saw Jessica's face. "Oh my God, you actually did it. You quit." "I quit." Jessica could not help smiling, even though tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. "I really quit. Where are you going?" Do you have something lined up? Jessica nodded. Brightwave Creative Agency offered me a position last week. I have been interviewing quietly for the past month. The pay is about the same, but Nicole, the culture is completely different. They actually encourage creative thinking and collaboration. Nicole hugged her tightly. I am so happy for you. You deserve this. You deserve to work somewhere that appreciates you. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur. Richard barely spoke to her, which was actually a relief. He reassigned her projects to other team members and seemed determined to pretend she no longer existed. Jessica packed up her desk slowly, taking only the personal items that mattered and leaving behind everything associated with Ashford Communications on her last day. A Friday afternoon in early autumn, Jessica walked out of the building for the final time. She looked back once at the glass and steel structure that had been her professional home for 4 years. So much frustration, so many moments of self-doubt, so many nights wondering if she was the problem, but she was not the problem. She was good at what she did. She was about to prove it. The Fresh Start Brightwave Creative Agency occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District. With exposed brick walls, natural light flooding through massive windows, and an energy that felt completely different from the corporate sterility of Ashford Communications. On her first day, the creative director, Amanda Chen, greeted her with genuine warmth. Jessica, we are so excited to have you here. Your portfolio impressed everyone on the hiring committee. The campaign work you did for the Greenfield Foundation was particularly brilliant. Jessica felt something loosen in her chest. Someone had actually looked at her work and appreciated it. The first week at Brightwave felt like waking up from a long, exhausting dream. People smiled at each other in the hallways. Team meetings involved actual collaboration instead of one person dictating decisions. When Jessica presented ideas, colleagues built on them instead of tearing them down. She found herself staying late not because she was required to, but because she genuinely enjoyed the projects she was working on. You look different, Nicole observed during their weekly lunch date, 2 weeks into Jessica's new job. Happier. Lighter. I feel like myself again, Jessica admitted. I forgot what it was like to actually enjoy going to work. To have ideas and not immediately doubt them because I know someone will criticize them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Team meeting at 2 p.m. Big news about company growth. Jessica smiled at the message. Everything about this job felt right. She had made the correct decision in leaving Ashford Communications, and she was finally building the career she had always wanted. She had no idea that everything was about to change in ways she could never have imagined.
The announcement. Jessica walked into the conference room at exactly 2 o'clock, coffee in hand and a smile on her face. The past month at Brightwave had been everything she hoped for and more. Her creative campaigns were being implemented, her ideas were valued, and she felt like a respected member of a team rather than a target for constant criticism. The room filled quickly with her colleagues, everyone chatting excitedly about the mysterious announcement. Amanda stood at the front with an expression that Jessica could not quite read. Excitement mixed with something else. Nervousness, perhaps. Thank you all for gathering on short notice, Amanda began, her voice carrying across the room. I have some significant news that will affect all of us, and I wanted you to hear it directly from me rather than through rumors or emails. The room quieted instantly. Jessica felt her stomach tighten slightly. Change was never simple, even when it promised to be positive. Brightwave Creative has been growing rapidly over the past 2 years. We have taken on bigger clients, expanded our services, and built a reputation for innovative thinking and excellent results. This success has attracted attention from larger organizations looking to invest in creative agencies. Amanda paused, taking a breath. After careful consideration and negotiations, I have accepted an acquisition offer. As of next month, Brightwave Creative will become part of the Ashford Group. The room erupted in excited chatter. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. The Ashford Group. Richard Ashford's parent company. This could not be happening. The Ashford Group owns multiple companies across different industries, Amanda continued, clearly trying to address the concerns she saw on some faces. They have promised complete creative autonomy. Our leadership structure stays intact, our culture remains unchanged, and we gain access to resources and clients that will help us grow even further. Jessica's hands gripped her coffee cup so tightly she thought it might crack. Around her, colleagues were celebrating, discussing the opportunities this would bring. Nobody else seemed concerned because nobody else knew what she knew. There will be some integration meetings over the next few weeks, Amanda added. Representatives from Ashford Group will visit to understand our operations and introduce themselves. But I want to assure you that the bright wave you love is not going away. After the meeting dispersed, Jessica sat frozen in her chair. Nicole had warned her that Ashford Communications was part of a larger corporate family, but Jessica had never imagined this nightmare scenario. She had escaped Richard Ashford only to end up right back under his corporate umbrella. Jessica, are you okay? Amanda appeared beside her, concern evident on her face. You look upset about the news. I used to work for Ashford Communications, Jessica said quietly. That is where I was before coming here. Amanda's expression shifted to understanding. Oh. That is quite a coincidence. But the Ashford Group is massive, Jessica. You probably will not have much interaction with your old company. They operate fairly independently from each other. Jessica nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She wanted to believe Amanda was right, but something told her that Richard Ashford had a way of inserting himself where he was least wanted. The integration meeting. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, innocuous and professional. Integration team introduction, Monday 10 a.m., main conference room. Attendance mandatory. Jessica spent the weekend alternating between anxiety and anger. She had worked so hard to rebuild her confidence, to prove to herself that she was talented and capable. The thought of facing Richard again, of having him anywhere near her professional life, made her feel sick. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching her mood perfectly. Jessica dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, armor against whatever was coming. She arrived at the conference room early, positioning herself in the back corner where she might go unnoticed. The room filled with her Brightwave colleagues, all excited and curious about meeting the new corporate partners. Jessica kept her eyes on her notebook, pretending to review notes while her heart hammered against her ribs. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. A woman in an elegant gray suit entered first, followed by 3 people in expensive business attire. And then, walking in last, tall and imposing in a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, was Richard Ashford. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room systematically, the way they always did, cataloging every detail and every person. After the meeting dispersed, Jessica sat frozen in her chair. Nicole had warned her that Ashford Communications was part of a larger corporate family, but Jessica had never imagined this nightmare scenario. She had escaped Richard Ashford only to end up right back under his corporate umbrella. Jessica, are you okay? Amanda appeared beside her, concern evident on her face. You look upset about the news. I used to work for Ashford Communications, Jessica said quietly. That is where I was before coming here. Amanda's expression shifted to understanding. Oh. That is quite a coincidence. But the Ashford Group is massive, Jessica. You probably will not have much interaction with your old company. They operate fairly independently from each other. Jessica nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She wanted to believe Amanda was right, but something told her that Richard Ashford had a way of inserting himself where he was least wanted. The integration meeting. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, innocuous and professional. Integration team introduction, Monday 10 a.m., main conference room. Attendance mandatory. Jessica spent the weekend alternating between anxiety and anger. She had worked so hard to rebuild her confidence, to prove to herself that she was talented and capable. The thought of facing Richard again, of having him anywhere near her professional life, made her feel sick. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching her mood perfectly. Jessica dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, armor against whatever was coming. She arrived at the conference room early, positioning herself in the back corner where she might go unnoticed. The room filled with her Brightwave colleagues, all excited and curious about meeting the new corporate partners. Jessica kept her eyes on her notebook, pretending to review notes while her heart hammered against her ribs. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. A woman in an elegant gray suit entered first, followed by 3 people in expensive business attire. And then, walking in last, tall and imposing in a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, was Richard Ashford. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room systematically, the way they always did, cataloging every detail and every person. When his gaze reached the back corner and landed on her, Jessica saw his expression freeze for just a fraction of a second before his professional mask slipped back into place. "Good morning, everyone," the woman in gray began. "I am Patricia Donnelly, Chief Operating Officer of Ashford Group. We are thrilled to welcome Brightwave Creative into our family of companies." Jessica barely heard the introductions that followed. Her entire focus was on Richard, who stood to the side with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. He had not looked at her again since that initial moment of recognition, but she could feel his awareness of her presence like electricity in the air. "And this is Richard Ashford, CEO of Ashford Communications and Senior Vice President of Creative Operations for the Ashford Group," Patricia continued. "Richard will be overseeing the integration process and ensuring smooth collaboration between our creative agencies." Of course he would. Of course Richard could not simply leave her alone. He had to have oversight, had to have control, had to insert himself into every aspect of operations. "Thank you, Patricia," Richard said, his voice exactly as she remembered it. Cool, confident, commanding attention without effort. "I am looking forward to learning about Brightwave's unique approaches and identifying opportunities for synergy across our creative divisions." His eyes found Jessica again, just briefly, and she saw something flicker in his expression. Surprise? Discomfort? She could not tell. The presentation continued with discussions of shared resources, cross-company collaboration, and growth opportunities. Jessica absorbed none of it. She was too busy planning how to minimize contact with Richard and protect the sanctuary she had built at Brightwave. When the meeting concluded, Jessica made a direct path toward the door, hoping to escape before any individual interactions could occur. "Jessica Morgan." His voice stopped her 3 steps from freedom. She turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral, to find Richard standing directly in front of her path. "Mr. Ashford." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Quite a surprise to find you here," he said. Several of her colleagues were within earshot, watching the exchange with poorly concealed curiosity. "I was not aware you had moved to Brightwave." "It seemed like the right opportunity for my career development," Jessica replied, echoing the words she had used in her resignation conversation. "Sometimes growth requires new environments." Something shifted in Richard's expression, too quick to identify. "Indeed. I look forward to reviewing the work you have been doing here. I understand Brightwave has some innovative client strategies." The implicit threat was clear. He would be examining her work, evaluating her performance, potentially criticizing everything she had built in her month of freedom. "I am confident the work speaks for itself," Jessica said, lifting her chin slightly. "If you will excuse me, I have a client meeting to prepare for." She walked away before he could respond, feeling his eyes follow her down the hallway. Behind her, she heard Amanda engaging him in conversation about campaign metrics, providing the distraction Jessica needed to escape. Shifting dynamics. Over the following weeks, Richard became a constant presence at Brightwave. He attended strategy meetings, reviewed campaign proposals, and generally made himself impossible to avoid. But something was different from his behavior at Ashford Communications. He asked questions instead of making declarations. He listened when people explained their reasoning. He acknowledged good ideas and built on them rather than dismissing them. When he offered criticism, it came with specific suggestions for improvement and was delivered privately rather than in front of entire teams. Jessica watched this transformation with deep suspicion. People did not change their fundamental nature, especially not people like Richard Ashford. This had to be some kind of performance, a temporary facade that would crumble under pressure. The test came during a crisis with the Riverside Technologies account, the same client whose campaign Richard had destroyed in Jessica's final presentation at Ashford Communications. They were threatening to end their contract after a competitor launched an aggressive marketing offensive that was stealing their market share. "Emergency meeting in 20 minutes, Amanda announced, her face tight with stress. Riverside is furious and Richard is already in the conference room reviewing the situation. Jessica grabbed her laptop and notes, her mind already racing through possible strategies. When she entered the conference room, Richard was studying campaign data on the large screen, his expression intense but not angry. "Jessica," he said, looking up when she entered. "I need your assessment of what went wrong with the Riverside campaign and what we can do to salvage the relationship." This was it. The moment where he would revert to his old patterns and blame her for problems beyond her control. Jessica straightened her shoulders, ready for the attack. "The original campaign we inherited from Ashford Communications was too focused on technical specifications," she began, keeping her voice professional. "Riverside's competitors shifted to emotional storytelling while we were still listing product features. We have been losing ground because the message does not resonate with the target audience on a human level." Richard nodded slowly, still studying the data. "Go on." "I propose we completely restructure the approach. Instead of competing on technical details where everyone sounds the same, we position Riverside as the company that understands how their technology improves daily life. We tell stories about real people solving real problems, with Riverside products as the enabling force rather than the focus." Jessica pulled up examples on her laptop, showing mock-ups she had been developing. "Here is a concept for the first phase. We feature a small business owner who expanded her company using Riverside's cloud solutions. Not the technology itself, but the dream she achieved because of it." The room was silent. Jessica held her breath, waiting for Richard to tear apart her proposal the way he had done so many times before. "This is excellent strategic thinking," Richard said finally, his voice carrying none of the dismissiveness she expected. "You have identified the core problem and created a solution that differentiates Riverside from their competitors. The emotional angle is exactly what this campaign needs." Jessica stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You think the concept works?" "I think the concept is brilliant," Richard corrected. "This is the kind of innovative thinking that attracted Ashford Group to Brightwave in the first place." He turned to Amanda. "I want Jessica to lead this campaign restructure. Give her whatever resources she needs and fast-track approval processes. Riverside needs to see concrete changes within 2 weeks." After the meeting dispersed, Richard approached Jessica as she gathered her materials. "Can we speak privately?" Every instinct told her to refuse, to maintain distance and protect herself. But curiosity won. "Your office or mine?" "Yours. This is your territory. I am the guest here." They walked in silence to her small office, and Jessica gestured to the chair across from her desk. Richard sat, looking strangely uncertain for someone who usually commanded every room he entered. "I owe you an apology," he began, and Jessica felt her world tilt sideways. "My management approach at Ashford Communications was fundamentally flawed. I treated criticism as motivation and control as leadership. I was wrong." Jessica found her voice. "What changed?" "You did." Richard leaned forward slightly. "When you resigned, I dismissed it as weakness. But then 3 more talented people left within 2 months, all citing the same issues you raised. My father conducted a comprehensive review of my leadership and the results were devastating. High turnover, low morale, clients threatening to leave because team members were too afraid to take creative risks. He met her eyes directly. I have spent the past 3 months in executive coaching, learning how to actually lead instead of just control. Working with Brightwave, watching how Amanda manages creative talent, seeing you thrive in a supportive environment, it has shown me exactly how much damage my approach caused. Jessica studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better than what I gave you at Ashford Communications. Because your work was always excellent, and I was too focused on asserting authority to recognize it. And because I want you to know that the respect I am showing your work now is not political or strategic. It is genuine recognition of your talent. The apology hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Jessica thought about the 4 years of constant criticism, the eroded confidence, the nights spent questioning her own abilities. One apology could not erase all of that damage. But she also thought about the Richard she had observed over the past few weeks. The collaborative approach, the respectful communication, the willingness to acknowledge good ideas regardless of who presented them. People could change when they chose to, when consequences forced them to confront their failures. Thank you for the apology, Jessica said finally. I appreciate the honesty. But Mr. Ashford, rebuilding trust takes time. Especially when someone has spent years undermining it. I understand. And Jessica, please call me Richard. I think we are past the point of formal titles, given our complicated history. Proving ground. The Riverside Technologies campaign became Jessica's opportunity to demonstrate everything she had learned and everything she was capable of when given creative freedom and genuine support. She assembled a team, developed a comprehensive strategy, and worked 18-hour days to create something truly exceptional. Richard kept his distance but remained available. When Jessica had questions about corporate resources or needed approval for budget increases, he responded quickly with support rather than obstacles. When she presented progress updates, he offered insights without attempting to take control. It was the kind of leadership she had always wished for during her years at Ashford Communications. 3 weeks after the emergency meeting, Jessica stood before the Riverside Technologies executive team in their downtown headquarters. Her presentation was flawless, the creative concepts were powerful, and the strategic reasoning was airtight. She felt confident in a way she had not experienced in years. The Riverside CEO, a sharp woman named Helen Brooks, watched the entire presentation without interruption. When Jessica finished, silence filled the conference room for what felt like an eternity. This is exactly what we needed, Helen said finally, a smile spreading across her face. This campaign captures our brand vision better than anything we have seen in 5 years. Ms. Morgan, you have saved this relationship and possibly our market position. Relief and pride flooded through Jessica in equal measure. She had done it. She had taken a failing account and transformed it into a success story. Richard, who had attended the presentation as executive oversight, spoke up. Jessica led this entire strategy development. The innovative thinking and emotional resonance you see in this campaign reflect her unique understanding of how to connect technology with human needs. He was giving her full credit, publicly acknowledging her work without trying to claim any of the success for himself. The old Richard would never have done that. Unexpected promotion. 2 days after the successful Riverside presentation, Amanda called Jessica into her office with an expression that was difficult to read. Close the door and sit down, Amanda said, gesturing to the comfortable chairs by her window rather than the formal seats across her desk. We need to talk about your future here. Jessica's stomach dropped. Had she somehow made a mistake? Was the Riverside success not enough? The Ashford Group has been extremely impressed with your work, Amanda continued. Particularly Richard. He has been advocating strongly for creating a new position that would give you more authority and impact across multiple clients. This was not what Jessica expected to hear. What kind of position? Senior Director of Strategic Innovation. You would oversee campaign strategy for our top-tier clients, mentor junior strategists, and serve as creative leadership for complex accounts. It comes with a significant salary increase and equity options in Brightwave. Jessica stared at Amanda, trying to process this information. Richard recommended this? Not just recommended. He fought for it in budget meetings with the corporate office. He told Patricia Donnelly that promoting you was essential to maintaining Brightwave's competitive advantage. The woman who had fled Ashford Communications to escape Richard's criticism was now being promoted based on his strong advocacy. The irony was almost overwhelming. There is one complication, Amanda added carefully. The role would require regular collaboration with Richard on strategic planning for the entire creative division. You would be working closely with him on high-level decisions. Given your history, I need to know if that is something you can handle professionally. Jessica thought about the Richard she had worked with over the past 2 months. The respectful communication, the collaborative approach, the genuine acknowledgement of her abilities. He was not the same person who had made her life miserable at Ashford Communications, or perhaps he had always been capable of this version of himself and had simply chosen not to show it. I can handle it, Jessica said. As long as the dynamic remains professional and collaborative. It will, Amanda assured her. Richard has changed, Jessica. Whatever happened that made him reevaluate his leadership approach, it seems permanent. The entire Ashford group has noticed the difference. Honest conversation. Jessica accepted the promotion, and the announcement was made at the next company meeting. Her colleagues congratulated her enthusiastically, genuine happiness for her success evident in their responses. This was the kind of supportive environment where people celebrated each other's achievements rather than resenting them. After the meeting, Richard asked if they could speak privately. They walked to a quiet courtyard behind the building, away from curious eyes and interested ears. Congratulations on the promotion, Richard began. You earned it through exceptional work and leadership. Thank you. And thank you for advocating for the position. Amanda told me you pushed for this with corporate. Richard nodded, leaning against the brick wall of the building. I meant what I said about genuine recognition of your talent. You are one of the most strategically minded people I have ever worked with, and Brightwave would be foolish not to maximize your potential. Jessica studied him in the afternoon sunlight. He looked different somehow, less rigid and intimidating than he had at Ashford Communications. Or perhaps she was different, no longer approaching him from a position of fear and self-doubt. Can I ask you something honestly? Jessica said. Why did you treat me the way you did at Ashford Communications? Was my work really that inadequate, or was something else happening? Richard was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes distant. Your work was never inadequate. In fact, it was often the best work being produced by my team. But I had built my reputation on being the smartest person in every room, the one with all the answers and the highest standards. When you presented ideas that were genuinely innovative, it threatened that identity. He met her eyes directly. So I criticized and dismissed your work to maintain my sense of superiority. I convinced myself I was pushing you to improve when I was actually just protecting my own ego. It was cruel and counterproductive, and I am genuinely sorry for the damage it caused. The honesty in his voice was undeniable. Jessica felt something shift inside her, the last remnants of resentment loosening their grip. I spent months after leaving your company wondering if I was really as incompetent as you made me feel, she admitted. It took working here, having Amanda support my ideas and seeing them succeed, to realize that the problem was never my abilities. It was your inability to handle talent that might challenge you. You are absolutely right, Richard agreed. And watching you thrive here has been both humbling and illuminating. You are doing exactly the kind of work you were capable of all along. I just refuse to see it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, years of tension finally beginning to dissolve. "So where do we go from here?" Jessica asked. "We are going to be working together regularly in my new role. How do we make that functional given everything that happened between us?" "Honestly and professionally," Richard said. "I will never go back to the person I was at Ashford Communications. That leadership approach nearly destroyed my career and damaged too many talented people. If I ever start sliding back into old patterns, I need you to call me out immediately." "Oh, I will," Jessica assured him with a slight smile. "I am not afraid of you anymore, Richard. I know my worth and I know my capabilities. If you try to undermine me again, I will push back hard." "Good," Richard said simply. "That is exactly the kind of confidence and self-assurance that makes you exceptional at what you do." New chapter. 6 months after the acquisition, Brightwave Creative had expanded to twice its original size. The Riverside campaign had won industry awards and attracted major new clients. Jessica's promotion had been followed by successful launches of 3 additional strategic accounts, all exceeding performance expectations. More importantly, the culture that made Brightwave special had not only survived the corporate acquisition but had begun influencing other Ashford Group companies. Richard implemented collaborative leadership training across all his divisions, directly crediting the Brightwave model as inspiration. Jessica found herself genuinely enjoying working with Richard on strategic planning. Their meetings were productive and creative, 2 strong minds challenging each other in ways that produced better results than either could achieve alone. The respect between them was real and hard-earned. One Friday evening, as most of the office had emptied out for the weekend, Richard stopped by Jessica's office with 2 cups of coffee. "Peace offering for keeping you late with that budget review," he said, handing her one of the cups. Jessica accepted it with a smile. "I was staying late anyway. The Morrison Industries proposal needs final revisions before Monday. You know, I was reviewing our performance metrics from the past 6 months," Richard said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Client satisfaction is up 40%, employee retention has stabilized, and creative output quality has increased measurably. Do you know what the common factor is across all those improvements? Collaborative leadership instead of authoritarian control?" Jessica suggested. "That, yes. But more specifically, creating an environment where talented people like you can actually use their abilities instead of constantly defending against criticism." Jessica set down her coffee cup, meeting his eyes. "You really have changed, Richard. I did not think it was possible when I first saw you walk into that integration meeting. I thought you were going to make my life miserable all over again." "I almost did not believe I could change either," Richard admitted. "Breaking patterns that have defined your professional identity for years is difficult. But seeing the results, watching talented people thrive under different leadership, has been more rewarding than anything I achieved through control and criticism." "I am proud of you," Jessica said, and she meant it. Acknowledging failure and choosing to grow takes more courage than most people have. Richard smiled, an expression that transformed his usually serious face. "I had good motivation. I did not want to be the reason another talented person walked away from opportunities they deserved." As the evening sun streamed through her office windows, Jessica realized that her journey had come full circle in unexpected ways. She had left Ashford Communications broken and doubting herself. She had found her confidence and abilities at Brightwave. And now she was working collaboratively with the very person who had once made her question everything. But this time, she was not the frightened employee seeking approval. She was a respected leader, secure in her abilities and clear about her worth. Richard was not her boss or her critic. He was a colleague who had learned the hard way that real leadership comes from empowering others rather than diminishing them. The resignation that had felt like defeat had actually been the beginning of victory. Sometimes you had to walk away from toxic situations to discover your true potential. And sometimes, years later, you got to show the people who doubted you exactly what they had missed. Jessica Morgan had done exactly that, and she had built a career she was genuinely proud of in the process.